What are the worst states for off-grid, self-sufficient, simple life living? Is your state on the list? Let's find out. What are the worst states for the simple off-grid living lifestyle? Is your state on the list? How do we even decide what makes a state good to live in or bad to live in? Let's talk about it. The first two states on my list are Rhode Island and Connecticut. Why would I pick these two states as not being off-grid, self-sufficient lifestyle living good? We all have our own requirements, and generalizing is just, well, it's generalizing. And trying to pick things that are good for all of us, you and me and everybody else, and looking at an entire state and generalizing for the whole state, there's always going to be exceptions. And if your state is on my list, I apologize, but hey, there's 50 states and somebody's got to be number one and somebody's got to be number 50. So I've made up my list of the worst states for off-grid, self-sufficient, simple life living, and your list might be different. And what I used in my list are three basic criteria. Criteria number one is personal freedoms. Criteria number two, fiscal freedoms. Criteria number three, regulatory freedoms. So what are these three freedoms that I'm talking about? Personal freedom, that is First Amendment, free speech. Second Amendment, right to keep and bear arms. Your choices to just do the things that you want to do when you want to do them. I'm all about living happy, fun-loving, and carefree, and part of that is your personal freedom. You can say what you want to say when you say it. You have a right to bear arms. You can go to a gun store and buy a gun. You can walk out in your woods and you can shoot it. You know, you can do these things without somebody getting in your face. Depending on who you are, an important personal freedom might be something like homeschooling your children. If you have, your school-aged kids and you want to homeschool them, that's a personal freedom, and that could be very, very important to you. And I did consider that in my choices of these states. My second category was fiscal freedoms. And fiscal is, the obvious number one is taxes. Income taxes, property taxes, sales taxes, your registration on your vehicles, the government basically taking your money to use it for some other project. And sure, we need, you need schools, you need roads, they need to be plowed in the winter if you're up north. I get all that. But every state is different, and again, you have to look at what's important to you. If income tax is important, if sales tax, if property taxes, whatever it is. I kind of picked what I thought was the most important for the most people, and that's what I used for my fiscal freedom component of my ranking. And then the regulatory freedoms, the rules for business, government telling you what you can do, when you can't do it. Do you need permits for this and permits for that? Or you want to start a business, you got to get a license, and all of those types of things. Those are the fiscal freedoms. So personal freedom, fiscal freedoms, and the last one is regulatory freedoms. And I tried to make those what I thought were important for the most of us. So my first two states were Rhode Island and Connecticut. I doubt you're homesteading in those two states. You're off-grid living there, but maybe you are. They're high populated states. They're up in New England. They have steep taxes in those states. They have, property tax and sales tax and income taxes. Rhode Island is one of the strictest states for homeschooling, if that happens to be important to you. So that's why those two states are on my list of worst states. What do you think? Rhode Island and Connecticut, worst states to live in? My next two states are Maryland and New Jersey. And Maryland and New Jersey. And again, high property taxes, income taxes, gas taxes, they're in your pocket all the time, and lots of rules, difficult to be off grid there. They're fairly urban states. Yes, you can get out into the woods, and I'm sure you can find a rural property, but you still have to deal with all of the other issues. And Maryland is a pretty darn strict state in the firearm department. So Rhode Island and Connecticut, New Jersey and Maryland. I think those four states would be very difficult for an off-grid, self-sufficient, simple lifestyle living. Would you agree? And the three biggies, in my opinion, are Illinois, California, and New York. They're states that are in severe fiscal crisis. They're in the holes. People are leaving the states. The population is decreasing rapidly, 3, 4, 5%. So the people that stay behind have to keep paying more and more as the other people that are smart enough to exit the states exit. And if you live in Illinois or California or New York and you off-grid live there, hey, that's great, more power to you. I'm not sure how you afford all the property taxes. California just raised their gas tax. Their gas tax is the highest in the country. New York's property taxes are like twice the national average. It's just unbelievable there. So, and again, if you have a career and you can pay the taxes, then and it works for you, that's great. But most of us, when we want an off-grid, self-sufficient, simple lifestyle, we don't want to be paying $10,000, $12,000, $15,000 a year in property taxes. We want to be able to go into a gun store and be able to actually touch a firearm without having to have a permit to even look at a firearm. So New York, in my opinion, is by far the worst, but California is working really hard at catching up to them, again, with their brand new gas tax, and Illinois is right there behind them. So those three states, New York, California, Illinois, I don't know how anybody could want to be thinking about off-grid, self-sufficient living there, because even if you found a place today, what's it going to be like as time goes by? And as they're in such financial trouble, they're regulating themselves to death, they're fiscally taxing themselves to death, and they're taking away personal freedoms right and left every year. So that's my opinion. What do you think? And again, it really depends on your family's personal, what's happening for you. Depending on where you are in your incomes, if you're younger and you're earning a decent income and you have school-age children, your requirements are going to be different than somebody that's in their 70s and retired and their children are all grown up and they're looking, for a quieter lifestyle. It really is going to depend, and I've tried to generalize it. And, New York, I didn't mention this a moment ago, but it is nearly impossible to homeschool there. Rhode Island is strict, Vermont is strict, New York is strict, and I think actually Connecticut's pretty strict. But anyway, I know Rhode Island, Vermont, and New York are very strict for homeschooling. So if you want to homeschool your kids, that's going to be an issue. If you're going to live in a state that has a high personal property tax and you have cars and tractors and significant personal property. That's going to be something for you to consider. So you have to look at it for what's going to work for you, because what works for me, what works for your neighbor, what works for you, they're all going to be different. But I've generalized, and hopefully these handful of states that I've mentioned you agree with, and hopefully you're not living in any of them. So while you're looking for your off-grid, self-sufficient, simple life home, do your research, think about all the factors that are important in your life. Again, are taxes important? Are income tax? Do you need to be in a state with no income tax? Is it okay to pay an income tax? Is it a state with a high or low property tax, sales tax, school-aged kids? Is that important, or you don't need to worry about schools? If you have medical issues, do you need to know that there's a hospital nearby that can take care of your situation if you need services, if you get hurt, if you have a chronic issue, if you're diabetic, or whatever it might be? Is that something? You just have to really do your research and find the place that's important and works for you. It might be in a state that somebody else doesn't want to live in, and it works for you. That's just what you need to do. I want you to live happy, fun-loving, and carefree, and have the life of your dreams and your family's dreams, and for it to work out for you in the near future. So hopefully this video has helped you. Subscribe, watch another video, and we'll talk about whatever you want to talk about in the next video.